And when I'd walk on the set with the wardrobe and the eye patch, I could see it in their eyes. They go, God, man, this guy's a bad boy. And they don't look at you very long.
Picking up where we left from part 2, Snake has now gone to save the President of the United States, but he's captured, and Frank Doubleday is just so great in this film. He's a highlight in every scene he's in. This is my favorite scene of his in the film, when he looks at Maggie's cleavage. Then he mocks her, showing he has no cleavage, but acts like he does, opening his shirt suggestively, and then he walks away while pointing at her as if he grandstand her. It is both subtle and, ironically, over the top.
You had a gun on me, Duke. There was nothing I could do.
Speaking of subtleties, immediately after Romero's scene, Maggie pulls out Snake's gun, suggesting that they do something, but Brain curtails her, like a true tactician would. It was Isaac Hayes who came up with the idea that the Duke would have facial twitches whenever he was around Snake Plisken. Carpenter loved the idea and let him roll with it. When Donald Pleasance was working around Isaac Hayes, he was always cracking jokes, making it hard for anyone to stay in character.
Thank God the camera was not on me. I was throwing the lines to him at that time, and Donald was so funny. I was cracked up.
Adrienne Barbeau also had a hard time composing herself when she was around Donald because she was laughing so much. There were several times that she would ask John to wait before they rolled the cameras so she could compose herself. Some of Donald's humor manifested visually in the film when he came up with the idea of having the president in a ridiculous blonde wig to humiliate the character. The studio was a bit nervous over how far the film was mocking the office of the president, but the final cut was not adjusted to alleviate such concerns. There is another cameo of John Carpenter in the helicopter. The helicopters are there to drop food supplies routinely, which is why the gypsies knew where to put the president's briefcase with the message to Houck. Now, Slag was originally to be played by Bruiser Brody, but Ox Baker ended up with the part instead. He made $2,000 for the part. The wrestler tried to subdue his blows, but some made contact with Kurt, and he got a lot of bruises. The other problem with the fight was that Kurt's snake tattoo kept running between takes, thus causing more shots where Kurt was getting beat up. Ox was very nervous about the bat scene, where Kurt hit him in the back of the head. In that scene, Ox wore a wooden neck brace on the back side of his neck. Kurt would then hit him right on the spot with a bat that had real nails in it. If Kurt missed, Ox would be stabbed by the nail, so it was very serious if the mark was missed. Thankfully, Kurt landed the blow properly. After the tracer was triggered, there was an extended scene where Houck tells Dr. Cronenberg to prepare for Snake's return and to be ready to move any minute. The Secretary of State would tell Houck that he is too fond of Plisken, to which the warden would reply, "I love him. When I see him, I'm gonna kiss him on the lips." When we get to the rooftop, Brain and Maggie are busy trying to defend themselves against the Redskin gang, who is removing other people's crap from their territory. In a stereotypical fashion, the gang is dressed like Indians of the Old West and use Indian weapons. The thing about this is this scene would have tied together well with earlier deleted scenes from the film. And the only evidence that suggests this is an Indian gang completely is when you hear Brain cursing the gang as the fight is subsiding. Yeah, Redskins! Now, the worst scene for me in this film is right here when Snake looks under the hood and a man is in it. How in the heck did he fit in there in such a short time? Is there engine mechanics and pulleys on standby to remove the engine? Well, I guess so, because it's right in front of the Duke, and the script confirms this. It does call the engine a steam engine. But I still don't buy that the Duke would say, let's remove the engine and surprise them, rather than just wait for them and ambush them. The script also had some extra dialogue that was actually pretty good. After the scene, when the Duke chases them, there was an explanation for what happened to his other men, as they all went out in different cars, and the Duke was the last car to survive the chase. When the Duke chases after the others on the bridge, you can see the disco ball by his rear view mirror, and it proves that Disco never died. Accept this. It's a fact. Don't argue with the Duke. Borgnine stated he had a lot of fun playing Cabbie on the film, even though he thought he was playing a simple character that was no big deal for his career. When it came time to screen the movie, Borgnine took his wife to see it with many actors in the audience and saw something he didn't expect.
And there was not one thing said until it showed where I came down the road and pow, the car broke apart and there I was, dead. And everybody went, oh. They were sorry that I had passed away. I said, my God, what else can I possibly do? This is wonderful. So it turned out to be pretty good after all, so. That's it.
Maggie would then follow Cabbie in death, but her death was never shot. She just disappeared from the movie after the car crashed into her, and her death was apparently in question, though I don't know how she could survive being rammed by a car at that speed. The person who was confused about this was a teenage J.J. Abrams, who attended the film with his father. Really, J.J.? You really needed that explained to you? That explains a lot. Apparently, JJ raised his hand afterward and asked John, what happened to Maggie? I guess he didn't think it was clear enough that she died when the car hit her. To fix this, Carpenter filmed his wife dead to plug that question. So when you see her dead on the ground, this was filmed on location in their home garage. During her death scene, I know some folks who complained that it was stupid Maggie just stands there shooting until she dies. But Adrienne Barbeau had some very specific words about this death scene. That scene really gave me Maggie. We instantly know that avenging the death of her lover is more important than her life. There's just no question about it. And you can tell from Kurt's eyes in the scene that Snake knows it too. Now, a moment I never heard anyone talk about is the scene where the president stops Snake's line to take him up the wall. And I believe the reason is because the president really doesn't care if Snake gets shot. And while he is stationary, that would give a chance for the Duke to focus on Plisken and aim rather than following Plisken up the wall to possibly see the president with a gun. So I believe the president is using Snake as a diversion to take out the Duke. It's just another sad commentary on how people use other people to achieve their goals. And I love that the president stops the mechanism. It's a great detail. When the president kills the Duke, Pleasance used his memories of being a fighter pilot in World War II. He was shot down and captured. After his capture, he was tortured by the Japanese in a war camp. With the memories fresh, he recalled invoking them while shooting the Duke in revenge. Some say that the president shooting the Duke is symbolic of how leaders kill their subjects, and others say it is odd for the same reason. I think it's a man having revenge on another man for humiliating him, cutting off his finger, and putting him through hell. Nothing more, nothing less. However, that does not mean my opinion is absolute. Now, a god-awful critic who slammed this movie stated it was so dumb that the president just can't repeat what he said on the tapes, as if the president recorded what is on the tape. And it's clear the voice on the tape is not Pleasance, because we hear it in Cabbie's car.
The discovery of the tritium creates only 1/1,000,000th of the biological damage of iodine-1.
And the script verifies this by stating the dialogue belongs to a scientist. Some critics just need to pay attention to the movies they're watching. I love the cynicism of Snake in this scene. In his hands, he holds the future and possible peace with other countries, but he doesn't care. He just destroys it in defiance, as if it means nothing. As I did research for this movie, I sat my two sons down to watch it. My oldest son, who is in college, enjoys films like Dredd, Count of Monte Cristo, Terminator, and Idiocracy. When he watches films, he is usually doing something like playing a game on his computer or working. So if he gives a movie his full attention, he prods it because it better be good if he's giving it his full time. He hated Escape from New York, as he thought Snake was a cardboard character he had seen time and time again. He also couldn't stand some moments that he saw as convenient or not thought out. He loathed the electrical box near the elevator and pointed out that there should be no power for that building, especially on that floor. Later, when the Duke and his men had Brain and Snake dead to rights, he was annoyed that Snake fired a few shots, caused steam to erupt from a car engine, and got away without any shots hitting them as they ran. And even though I love this movie, my son is absolutely right, because if you remember, there was a guy standing right next to them with a crossbow, but he disappeared for them to get away. Whoops! In the end, I'm a sucker for this movie, I have to be honest. I still love it, warts and all. Maybe that's my bias coming out, but I'm going to announce my bias for all of you to see, because I wouldn't be an honest critic then, would I? My other son, who loves anime and pretty much most films, saw Escape as fine, but said it was funny in a bad way because he could see the errors. It just goes to show how different generations view different films, and all critics need to be aware of this, especially those pathetic internet trolls who hate entire groups of people for liking, hating, or talking about movies. For the 70s and 80s, Snake was unique for that time. To the current generation, I can understand completely how they can see Snake as a tired and cliched character, especially those kids who grew up playing Metal Gear, because Solid Snake is a direct replica of Snake Plisken. Despite them seeing Snake as cliched, I don't agree with them at all, but it's important to see their point of view, even though when Snake came out when I was young, he was new and awesome. In the end, Escape from New York was escapist fantasy, meant to be fun without being taken too seriously. Because the filmmakers acknowledged this time and time again, I would honestly say if you like dark-toned films, or are a movie lover who enjoys older films and science fiction, this movie will not only do the job, but you'll most likely want to see it again. For me, I see it every year or two. However, the sequel, not as much, which brings us to Escape from L.A. in 1996. The month before Escape from New York came out, in July 1981, studio president of Avco, Robert Remy, left for Universal Studios, and for the rest of the year the studio was kind of in a vacuum, until it was purchased by TV mogul Norman Lear and his partner. Lear would then use the studio to focus on continuing the production of his current television hits, like Jeffersons, Facts of Life, Silver Spoons, and of course, Different Strokes, which happened to be my favorite at that time.
I got no quiet, I got no privacy, I got nowhere to go to think my deep thoughts.
What you talking about, Willis?
There were a lot of television movies made as well, and Avco gave Rob Reiner his big break to direct movies like The Sure Thing, This Is Spinal Tap, and finally Stand By Me. The idea was floated around to make an Escape from New York sequel just after it was fresh out in theaters. And video rentals were great for this movie, and it had a cult following. Yet John Carpenter was not enthusiastic about making a sequel because of his bad experiences with the Halloween films and his disdain for sequels themselves.
On the other hand, I think Halloween 2 is an abomination and a horrible movie. I was really disappointed in it.
Through the years, Avco had several name changes after it was bought by Coca-Cola, and then it was sold to Dino De Laurentiis in November 1985. With all this moving around, it was a bit confusing, but once Dino was in place, he liked low-budget movies that made money, and he also liked sequels, so the door was possible to make a sequel again. Kurt and Carpenter were on a plane flight returning home, and Kurt stated that it would be great to return to that world. Once Dino heard this, he showed interest, and Carpenter called Coleman Luck, who was writing a dark TV show called The Equalizer. He got permission to take a break from the show and started working on the Escape from L.A. script. After a bit of work, Coleman finished his first draft on December 7th, 1987. This was his script. In this script, the fall of L.A. is contributed to a biological agent that was caused by a tanning lotion factory, which was released in the atmosphere, and it was so harsh that almost 100% of the LA population went insane, and it was followed 3 weeks later by an earthquake that separated the city from the continent, becoming its own island. As a result, the United States abandoned the city and turned it into an asylum for the criminally insane. Then we go to New Las Vegas, as a police chopper lands and a familiar man exits the craft, but we don't see his face. It is September 16th, 1995, and Snake is walking the strip, where hookers are trying to get his attention and fortune tellers are trying to suggest that he's going to die, which Snake's reply is, "We're all gonna die, hag." He heads to a casino where you bet your body parts. You gamble a part of your body, and if you win, you get money. If you lose that body part, while an audience watches. Snake shows up after a man lost his hand. He walks past Snake with a metal cover over where his hand used to be. The crowd is screaming for more, and Snake goes to the machine and bets his ass. The crowd roars when Snake does this. When Snake pulls the arm of the machine, he loses, but instead of giving up his body part, he shoots the machine and drops a grenade in it. Coins and fluid fly everywhere, and the crowd goes nuts, grabbing the wealth all over the floors. Snake leaves and ends up in a tattoo parlor. He knows the artist, and he wants his snake tattoo fixed. The artist works on him, but it doesn't end well. Snake is injected by a needle and begins to pass out when Bob Houck enters into the room, smiling and smoking a cigarette, as his plan to capture Snake worked perfectly. Then Snake wakes in Houck's office. Houck reads off his file like the last film, but lists different crimes. He mentions Snake selling a bank president into slavery in Nashville, to which Snake says he wouldn't accept his gold card. He also killed a tax collector in Cincinnati, to which Snake says he's a tax protester, and currently he just destroyed government property in Las Vegas. In this script, Snake is fun, but he talks a bit too much, and it needed to be toned down quite a bit. Regardless, Houck walks to the window and tells Snake that if he died, no one would notice, except Houck, and then he turns to see Snake pissing on his desk. Houck kicks Snake to the floor and leans on his neck until security comes in and takes Snake away. Later, Houck gets with Snake again after he was roughed up a little. Houck tells him they are dropping him in L.A., and he has 48 hours to complete a mission. Snake says he's been bored lately and will make Houck a deal. He will go in willingly as long as he gets his choice of weapons, and Houck will have to be his fairy godmother and grant him any wish of Snake's choice. Houck agrees, stating he likes Snake. Snake states they have their rat, and Houck tells him that a new secret weapon needs to be tested, and Snake's a part of that. In a helicopter over L.A., Snake is ready to jump and is given a submachine gun. Snake turns and fires at Houck, but it hits nothing. Houck laughs and says he thought something like that would happen, so blanks are in the gun. Snake is then shoved out of the copter. Snake lands in the city after his parachute is shot, and sirens can be heard detecting his arrival. 2 cop cars and a garbage truck with the words Cultural Preservation Committee, We Serve and Protect, arrive and surround Snake. The garbage truck picks up the idle Snake off the ground and dumps him into its trash container. Snake wakes tied to a cross within a parade. He is on a float represented by the Universal Home of Pancakes, and crowds are cheering. Next to him is a pretty girl named Blandish Vox, who seems as ditzy as they come. Announcers can be heard overhead, and another float comes at them from the opposite direction. This float looks gelatinous, but like Snake's float, there is also a turret gun. The opposing float, the first interstate sperm bank of... I can't. The opposing float is called the First Interstate Sperm Bank of America. Both floats start firing at each other. and Snake turns on Blandish, stating they are being shot at. Blandish replies, "What do you expect? It's float wars." A man named Drummond, who is wearing clothes like Snake, begins to fire towards him, but Snake gets free. Blandish asks Snake for help, and when asked why, she says, "I don't know." Snake frees her, and she says she's going to help him. Then she says, "I know where they put your gear," and they run off. They come to a dead end, and the man named Drummond is following them. Drummond knows Snake, as he talks about Leningrad and missions they shared in the past. Snake kills the man while Blandish goes into one of the floats where she thinks the guns are. She tells Snake to keep an eye out for bald cats, which are bald females who hate men. Snake leaves and heads to a bar that Blandish tells him not to enter. Snake goes in anyways and orders a beer. He is ignored and everyone turns on him. They are all disfigured with huge heads, and it doesn't seem to faze Snake one bit. He goes to the tap and pours his own beer, which is not beer, but Snake doesn't care. He drinks it anyways. Then he climbs up on the bar and changes the channel, ignoring all the other occupants. All the people in the bar just stare at him. On the screen, local news, helmed by loonies, report that Snake and Blandish have escaped, and that they destroyed several floats, and that any citizen who sees them should kill them on sight. Blandish then calmly calls Snake, who looks down from the television to see the entire bar folk surrounding him with guns pointed at him. "You can get away, just move slow. You've been moving too fast. That's what they hate. If you move like slow motion, they'll never notice. And don't talk. They hate talking, except on TV." Snake does as she says, and they get outside with ease. The patrons in the bar look confused. Once Blandish and Snake get outside, the door slams. The guns shoot off from inside the bar, and Blandish leads him to safety. Once they think they are safe, crazies from the sewers capture both Snake and Blandish. She calls their captors surfers, and they end up in a board room, which has surfboards with a skeleton standing against each one. But a huge roar occurs, and the crazies scatter as a giant eye approaches their position. Blandish asks what the roar was, and Snake replies, "How the hell am I supposed to know? This is your damn city." The howling continues, but the closer the eye gets, the more it appears that it's a golf cart disguised as a giant eye. An old man comes out flashing a flashlight at Snake, who tells him to turn the light off. The man says he was just checking, as he thought he was dead. Blandish pleads to be free and states Snake was just scared that he was going to hurt them. The man recognizes Snake and says that they don't get celebrities that much around here, and states the last one they saw was a guy named Geraldo. He then points to a skeleton on a surfboard, which has a big mustache and a microphone wrapped around his neck. The man frees them and takes them away. He shows them where to go, and Snake and Blandish end up on a freeway. While there, Blandish is killed, being shot in the back. As she dies, she tells Snake to run and dies. It is the cultural police trying to get Snake, and they have just successfully taken out one of their targets. Then a man comes to Snake's rescue. Think Eddie from Escape from L.A. and a beach boy, and you get this character. His name is Johnny Lorder, and he calls Snake Bobby constantly throughout the film, which annoys Snake. When Johnny tells Snake his name, Snake replies, "Johnny Lorder got greased." Turns out, Johnny was supposed to die in Leningrad serving with Snake. He shows Snake some scars, and Snake wants out of the car. But like the finished film with Eddie, Johnny shoots Snake with darts from the glove box, and Snake goes unconscious. Snake wakes and finds Johnny around a bunch of people exercising, sipping on carrot juice. Near Johnny is Snake's gun and shoes. This, of course, leads to a fight. And in an odd twist, the room goes dark with neon lights. Yes, it's Snake Plisken meets Batman and Robin. Lorder grabs neon nunchucks. The people spectating the fight continue to exercise. Yes, you heard me right. It is beyond batshit crazy, and not in a good way. Snake seemingly kills Johnny and gets away with his gun and shoes just when the police and reporters break in following Snake's trail. I need some build-up before I lead into this part. Okay, I hope you're ready for this, because Snake runs by a canine bus made up of dog handlers and humans who think they are dogs. Yep, you are in the Twilight Zone. Attention furries, your dream has come true. The canines are let loose to chase after Snake, but after a while Snake gets away and disguises himself in a red-robed group that chat and dance in a stadium. Snake tries to blend in and copy their movie. Copy their movies. Copy any movie but this one. Snake tries to blend in, and it is discovered that all in this place are part of a church that is going to see their Reverend Mother, Cher. They're going to see their Reverend Mother, Cher. Cher comes on stage and blesses the crowd, and there's a bunch of priests that are going to make people feel better. Snake is picked out of the crowd with a bunch of others, and they kneel at a table, while the canine people pretending to be dogs and the cultural police are searching for Snake. A crazy man next to Snake asks one of the priests that a psychic told him he was a talk show host in a past life, and it's been bothering him. He asks if it's true, to which one of the priests that are supposed to heal him mumbles something. The man turns to Snake, asking if he knew what the priest said. He says yes, and before that you were a maggot on an elephant's butt like everybody else in here. Then Snake throws off his hood, and the police immediately see him. Of course, Snake being this dumb means he gets captured, of course. But Cher seems to have power, so the priests get custody of him, and the priests tell him he must discover the God within him, and that we are all gods. To which Snake replies, "No wonder the world is such a bag of horse shit." What am I reading? Okay, moving forward. Snake is taken into the depths of the Queen Mary. Cultists are everywhere. Snake seems to suffer a hallucination where he fights another Leningrad war buddy named Dargon, who during the war was shot up bad, and he was Snake's best friend. Snake mercy kills Dargon, but he can't tell whether it's real or an illusion. However, when Snake gets past these possible visions, he finds himself with a man named Turnwheel, who happens to be in a wheelchair. And he is dressed like Gandhi. Like, really. He tells Snake that he's looking for Rodent Park, and he intends to take him there. Snake realizes that Turnwheel knows Houck. He also learns that Turnwheel works for the military and is trying to put L.A. back together again. Turnwheel tells Snake the future is genetics, and Snake has been his test subject, as he has cloned all of Snake's war buddies. And he cloned Blandish, and all governments work with him because every government needs armies. They arrive to Rodent Park, which is Disneyland, the happiest place on earth. Of course it is in Disneyland. Crowds gather, and Turnwheel shows the crowd and Snake a commercial where a cleanly shaven Snake Plisken, covered in medals with two good eyes, tell people to join the military and how he was so happy to serve the police force. Snake is disgusted and shown into a room where the clone that made the commercial is waiting. Snake is told this version was cloned from cells found on the float where he bled. Snake is led to a room where the dead bodies of Blandish, Johnny Lauder, and Drummond are stored and currently being used to make more clones around them. There is another tank in the room, and it's empty, waiting for Snake. Outraged, Snake attacks his clone guard, who has every memory Snake has. The clone fights with skills that Snake has long forgotten. plus skills that he knows now. The clone taunts him and asks Snake about his missing eye and why he doesn't talk about it anymore. Snake gets further outraged, and the clone says that after the woman died, he just couldn't handle the tears anymore, and that Snake used a needle to stab away the tears. This causes Snake to fight harder until the clone defeats him. Then Snake does something that we would never expect him to do. He falls into a vat and kills himself, knowing he can't win. Now, are you ready for this? Because I'm not, and I had to read this like 5 times to try to make sense of it. The clone is over the vat Snake willingly committed suicide in, and suddenly the clone feels great emotion, as if the death of Snake affected him. The clone cries in his left eye, where Snake would have wore a patch. After a short bit, that eye begins to drip blood. In rage, the clone goes nuts and begins killing everything in the room, and after getting a gun, shoots every vat and kills Turnwheel. Snake yells into a loudspeaker amid the destruction as Houck's helicopter is landing. Snake demands that Houck promise to give Snake whatever he wanted. Houck tells the helicopter to leave, but Snake continues on the loudspeaker. Snake says he wants L.A., the whole island. As the copter leaves, words appear on the screen. 2 years later, Snake Plisken entered the penal colony of Manhattan on a mission to save the President of the United States. Thus, this suggests that a clone went in and saved the President. Then a holographic image of L.A. dissolves and the film fades to black. I'm trying to put into words what I just read and relayed to you, my dear audience, because we are all dumber now for discovering, you see what's happening? We are all now dumber for discovering it. And if you discovered this script before, you are dumberer. Is that a word? I couldn't give a crap, because now I'm dumber, and I have an excuse for it, because I've read this script. What's to say? Well, it was not really inspired by Snake Plisken. Rather, it was inspired, most likely, by coke abuse. But to think of this script as a film, and even more so as a sequel to Escape from New York, I can only think of one image. Many years later, John Carpenter, who was graceful and kind, stated when he read it, he thought it was too light and too campy. In August 1988, DEG went bankrupt, and the idea of an Escape sequel died as well. Sure, there were some pretty memorable scenes in this script, but it dissolved into a tasty shit burger. And I don't want to sit there and pretend I like eating crap and go, So I'm glad this project didn't move forward. And it died because DEG died as a company. And we will explore the resurrection of this series in our next video. Don't you just love a good resurrection story?
Annie, look! You're not gonna believe it! Misa all sparkly glowy. Now we're gonna have all the time to spend together. I love you, Annie!
We will see you next time. If you like what you see here, click like and subscribe. Super thanks helps. After reading this script, therapy too. And don't forget to share if you can.